Attention higher leaders, it's time to shake up your marketing and enrollment strategy. Join us at Insights EDU February 17th to the 19th, 2026 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida for a beachfront experience and the best higher education marketing and enrollment management conference. Early bird pricing ends December 15th, 2025. Register now at insightsedu.com. The future unbound is at Insights EDU 2026. The EdUp experience has delivered over 1,000 episodes with higher ed leaders from around the world. Now you can support the show for just $5.99 a month and lock in that rate for life when you join before December 31st, 2025. You'll enjoy ad-free early access to episodes. Go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com. Click support the show and secure your lifetime rate today. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to Ed Up on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. And today I have a special treat for you because, as you know, usually I am behind the scenes. And when I am up front, I'll usually have a co-host. But this time, I am one-on-one. And this is rare, by the way. Our guest, he should know this. This is extremely rare that it's just me one-on-one with a guest. So I'm very excited about it. And today we have an awesome guest. He is Kees Bol, and he's the CEO at 2U. Kees, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, and with that intro, I feel quite honored.
And you should be. You should be. This is a rarity. And again, we've done this almost 6 years, over 1,000-something episodes. And I got to tell you, this is less than a handful of times that I've had a one-on-one. So happy to have you here. So let's get right into it, Kees. Tell us all about what you do and how do you do it?
Yeah, so like you said, I'm the CEO of 2U. I've held that position now for the last almost 9 months. I'm coming up on the 9 months mark. It goes fast. And just to remind you what 2U is and what we do, we partner with academic institutions and try to be as strategic as possible a partner for innovation and growth, mostly in online education. So we will work with partners on selecting the verticals and the programs in which our partners can be successful, help them create programs and launch those programs, and then manage those programs over a period of time. We do that both on the degree side, but also on the non-degree side. So be it in executive education program, being in short courses. As part of the short courses, we run primarily on the edX platform that is part of our overall ecosystem. And if you had to sort of like summarize my job into like 1 or 2 sentences, I would say I'm there to take 2U after a fairly turbulent period, which I'm sure
I've heard
people in the industry are aware of.
Yes.
Back to where it was before, being a leader in edtech with everything that comes with it. So the right partnerships, the right innovations, the right team, the right capabilities, growth, and success in the years to come.
Yeah. And as you know, and you stated, there has been a lot written about the company over the last couple of years. And so here's something I'm interested to know. What are some of the assumptions that you had that actually turned out to be right or wrong when you came into the position?
Yeah, that's a great question, right? Obviously, I said like it's coming up on 9 months. So let's say 10 months ago, I was kind of in that decision period, talking about potentially taking up this role and thinking about whether or not it would be the best next step for me in my career. And major thing in that decision, obviously, is whether or not I feel that I can be successful in the role. And that comes obviously with what I bring to the table, but also what I find once I'm in the role. Does the company basically have the core components that are necessary to be successful? So I've been in the industry for probably close to 2 decades now. So very familiar with 2U, always ethically admire 2U from the outside for the innovation that it drove, really sort of being at the front end of innovation, as well as the growth engine for a lot of the online programs that universities wanted to launch. So I was familiar with them beginning, and then also obviously followed this kind of turbulent years that the company went through, and ultimately resulted in going through bankruptcy now about a year ago, actually.
Oh, wow.
2U emerged from bankruptcy, so that's really officially now exactly a year ago. Familiar with that part, but also I assumed that looking at the company from the outside in, that the core component that are required to be successful, it's called the core bones of the company, right? The assets that it had, the partnerships that still existed, the relationships, the capabilities of the team, assets like edX and all that kind of stuff. We're all there and probably provided kind of the right mix of ingredients to make a very successful recipe. But what was needed was a change in direction, kind of a new kind of approach to where we want to go, setting out a long-term strategic goal, and then in a very careful way executing on those things that are necessary to get there. There was one additional component that I wanted to make sure of, and that was that obviously, now 2U is no longer a public company, so there's a new structure, and you want to make sure that the owners of the company are aligned with that kind of strategic vision as well. And want to make sure that they basically were willing to create the conditions necessary for the company to be successful. So I tried to sort of square all that off before I made the decision and then said, yes, I would be very excited to take this on. It's a fantastic challenge. I could almost not think of a better company to take on in the ed tech space and try to sort of like do this with. And very excited to start it. So that was about 9 months ago. Since that time, I've been able to verify that most, if not all, of the things that I was hoping for were indeed in place. The core elements needed to succeed were all there. So it's been actually a very successful 9 months for me, making sure that everything was in place, as well working with, which is largely a new management team in defining the strategy going forward, and now already several months into executing on that long-term strategy, which we believe will get us back to where we were in a slightly different way. The world has changed, so we're not trying to replicate the 2U from 10 years ago, but we're trying to create a company that can be successful in this new world.
I got to tell you, of everything you mentioned, I love your mindset. And I love the fact that you said, this is a good challenge. I want this challenge. This is a fun challenge. I think that's awesome. So it leads me to a question. And I just want to get to know you a little bit, and I'm sure the audience is, what was your pathway to the CEO? Tell us, because you said you were in 20 years experience. So I would love to hear your story. Tell us your story.
Well, my story definitely has a lot of like sharp left or right turns in it. So I started off truly thinking that I was going to be a scientist. So I
Oh, wow.
a PhD in physical chemistry from Harvard University, and I was sure I was going to be a professor somewhere. Then at the end of it, decided that it was not exactly what I wanted to do. So I kind of made one of those sharp turns and became a consultant and worked for McKinsey and Company for about 6 years. From there, went into finance. I worked for Capital One for about 9 years. During that time, I became more and more interested and involved in marketing, and then ultimately moved for my first job in higher education, working for strategic education as the chief marketing officer for that company. Then about 5 or 6 years, started working for Pearson, again in a similar job, this time in the K-12 space, and then was asked within Pearson to take leadership of their OPM businesses, because there were three separate businesses that sort of like moved together and became Pearson Online Learning Services. So I led that for a period within Pearson, and then also was part of the team that sold that business, carved it out, and sold it to private equity and became Boundless Learning. That's what I was doing about a year ago when I got a call about, hey, there's another job here that you might be interested in, and that's how the discussion with 2U started.
Wow, that's great. Thanks for that context. All right. So moving on to my next question. So because you worked in higher ed, you understand that you were going to be you were a PhD, and it was just fascinating. That's great. So you understand. So right now, you follow what's going on in higher ed. A lot of headwinds, right? You know that declining enrollment, funding pressures, questions about return on investment. So how accurate do you think that perspective is, that assessment is, from your perspective? And what are you seeing from the edtech side?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I would phrase it slightly different. I think there's a lot of wins. Some are
Really?
headwinds, some are
Cool.
winds in our back, right? definitely a lot of turbulence, and that creates a lot of change. But I always think about change as creating challenges and opportunities. So if you think about the business of 2U, right? So it's not necessarily the entire education space, but the business of 2U, we kind of we sometimes call ourselves a two-sided marketplace, right? We're working with two different customer sets, let's call it that way. So one customer sets are the learners, obviously, that are looking for educational solutions that we help to provide them with working with our partners. And the second part is our partners, which are the academic institutions that partner with us on that particular journey. For both of them, there are a number of things that are currently ongoing, and some I would say are positive, and some are kind of like make the world a little bit of a harder place to live in. I think on the institution side, obviously there is a lot of pressure on finances right now, which for a long time actually wasn't really there in such a critical way, right? So a lot of uncertainty, a lot of distraction. But in a way, it also emphasizes the importance of innovation, expanding access, driving new revenue, working with us on creating new programs. So the conversations have shifted and changed a little bit, but I wouldn't say that there is less appetite. If anything, there's actually more appetite to think about how we can work together. There's also like the element of workforce Pell, the move to potentially make Pell grants available for non-degree programs under certain conditions. I think is a great move. And actually in the business that we do, which is degrees, but also a lot of non-degree programs, actually provides significant opportunities. Then on the learner side, sort of our other set of customers, I would say one thing is just the general economic uncertainty. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people just don't know exactly what is going on and what's happening. And generally speaking, if something like that happens, that means that people stop making decisions and definitely stop making big purchases. And we definitely see that. People are more hesitant to say, yes, this is the right time to step into new education, invest in myself in many ways, right? So there's definitely that component is there. The other thing is definitely there's a significant shift towards non-degree programs as a way to get to the right skills and education and capabilities that you require to be successful in the workforce. This is driven by the learners themselves, but also driven by the employers that ultimately are going to employ these people and want them to be successful in their jobs. That's been going on for a while, but it's really starting to come to this critical point where it's almost the preferred direction. And that changes in many ways how we partner with our academic institutions, what kind of learning solutions we want to make available, as well thinking about these learners as customers to some extent that come back multiple times over their life rather than the one-time degree. So a lot of changes, but like in balance, some pros, some cons, and I'm kind of optimistic that we can maximize the pros and kind of like find a way to work with the cons.
Yeah, I agree. Tons of changes, and which leads me into my next question. You obviously are talking to a lot of universities, university leaders, and I'm looking to see if you can let me know what you're hearing from them. What is it that they want from their technology partners that they were not asking 5 or 10 years ago? What is it they want today?
Well, if anything, I mean, 10 or 15 years ago, the question that a company like 2U would get was on the level of, hey, we kind of heard about this thing, online education, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, right? But, and we really want to participate in it. Can you help us, right? That's kind of past, right? At this point, I think almost every self-respecting institution participates in some form of online education. Everybody's involved in it. I just read somewhere more than 50% of the students at least take some of their education online now, of all the students, not just so
Come on.
fear is big. And now it's more about, okay, how can you help us make the right decisions, right? So if you're an institution, where do you start? What are the right programs to start with? Where can you, as with your brand and your capabilities and what you're known for, what are the areas that you should step into? And then even if you decide to do what that is, how do you actually do it? What's kind of the first step, the second step? And then once you have a program, do you have the capabilities and the scale to actually run that program efficiently and successfully? So in the past, so 10, 15 a year, it was kind of like almost wholesale outsourcing, right? An institution to say, you guys do this for us. Now it's much more an institution saying, hey, I have some capabilities of myself. These are the kind of things that we can bring to the table. And we're looking much more to match where they have gaps and then actually work as a force multiplier rather than a wholesale replacement for what is happening inside the institution. So what it means for us is that we need to come to the table, and we do, in a more flexible way, trying to figure out it's not a single recipe, but every single time, every single instance, the recipe is going to be slightly different because the needs of the institution is going to be different depending on what they want to do and depending on what they bring to the table themselves and the capabilities that they have built up over multiple years. So that's probably where the biggest changes are.
Wow. So you mentioned online, and that stat was super interesting. And over 50% are taking an online course of all students. And so I appreciate that. Wow, that's interesting. So you know that there's an ongoing debate about the quality of online and hybrid education. So how do you where do you see the biggest gaps between perception and reality of that online debate? If you think you can coast into 2026, think again. Insights EDU is coming February 17th to the 19th, 2026, and it's taking over Fort Lauderdale for a beachfront experience. It's the event that will flip your marketing and enrollment strategy on its head. 3 days, over 65 expert speakers, and over 40 sessions. Zero fluff. Just powerhouse strategies from the most anticipated platforms like Google, Reddit, Meta, MIQ Digital, and the most forward-thinking schools in the nation. You'll get the real wins, the bold ideas, and the hands-on tactics to grow programs, drive engagement, and create the student experience today's modern learner demands. The question is, are you ready to lead, or will you get left behind? Mark your calendar, bring your team, and secure your spot at insightsedu.com. That's insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15, 2025. See you in Fort Lauderdale. EdUp Experience has brought you powerful conversations with more than 400 college presidents and higher ed leaders, over 1,000 episodes and counting. Now, we're inviting you to join us in shaping the future of higher ed podcasting. For just $5.99 a month, you lock in that rate for life, but only if you sign up before December 31st, 2025. As a supporter, you'll get ad-free early access to episodes. Prices go up after December 31st, but your rate never will. Visit edupexperience.com. That's edupexperience.com. Click support the show and join our community today.
Yeah, I know that it's somewhat still an online debate, but I actually challenged a little bit whether or not the debate is kind of over, right? I think, again, 10, 15 years ago, there was definitely a debate, and actually more than a debate. I think there were a lot of people that had already made up their mind coming into the debate that online education was just inferior, right?
Yes.
At this point, we're at the level, it is so big and everywhere, and everybody's participating, that I think people have accepted that it's here and is part of the education, as well as that the bright line that existed between on-campus education and online education has sort of like been going away, right? Where people do part of their education online, part of their education on campus in a hybrid way. So I think the bright lines are phasing away. And because of that, you can't really talk anymore about pure online and pure on campus. It becomes much more this hybrid discussion. So I do think the discussion that we should have is, what do we need to do to generally improve the quality of all education, not online or on ground? And I think there's definitely things that we can and need to do there, right? And it starts with, like, how do you actually measure whether or not education is successful, right? And I think there's a good move towards saying, okay, we should measure outcomes. Now, you can still have a long debate, okay, what are the right metrics to measure outcomes? But the general concept that outcomes is what we're looking for, I think that's an important first step. And then I think actually in many ways, the capabilities that are more online capabilities, like the flexibility that you have, the ways to make education adaptive, different for one person versus the other. The online space actually provides a whole set of possibilities and flexibility that it doesn't really exist in the on campus, on ground modality. So I think there's a lot of innovations that we can drive within online that would actually help the overall education to get to a better quality and a better outcome.
Yeah, speaking of innovation, you know that everyone's talking about AI in education, right? But we see that sometimes the implementation is a bit messier than what the hype suggests. So, what are you seeing in terms of actual adoption and results, both positive and concerning? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was in there's a tremendous amount of noise, almost, I would say, like around AI, right? Everybody's talking about it. I just was at a conference just earlier this week, and I'd say 90+% of the talks were either just about AI or at least mentioned AI multiple times in the discussion, right? So it's here, it's big, and it's not going to go away. I think the number one thing is, and I see a growing appetite for this, is the willingness to experiment. The wrong step here is to say, hey, I'm going to wait on the sideline and see whether or not this will go away, or I'm going to wait on the sideline and later maybe I'll do something. So luckily, or there's a good sign that people are more willing to think about, okay, how can we implement it and how can we augment the experience that we provide to learners by using AI. It's definitely true that not every single experiment is going to be successful, right? There's actually some stats that say that, especially in AI, most of the experiments are not successful. And that's kind of bad and good, right? I mean, coming actually from a scientific background, you do a lot of experiments that you learn, okay, that was not the way to do it. But that, in a sense, is a learning as well, right? And you got to sort of reap that and use that in the future implementation. On the other hand, there are also some examples of where implementation of AI has been experimented with, and it shows significant success. I'll call out one specific one that I'm very excited about. Is that like many companies, we provide an AI tutor to our students in many of our different learning solutions. One of the observations is that, well, not only is the student satisfaction with how the tutor interacts with them and how the tutor helps them just as good for the AI tutor as it was for the person tutor, the real person tutor. But the great gain has been that the adoption of using a tutor is an order of magnitude higher if it is an AI tutor than it is a person tutor. So that basically means
Wow.
there's a lot of people that wanted to use a tutor, probably needed to have a tutor, but were somehow hesitant, didn't want to ask a person. It kind of gets to this point. They didn't want to ask the dumb question, basically, right? And having an AI tutor basically took away that whole threshold to get over. And it means that the experience is as good, but you are basically providing that good experience to a lot more people. So the impact is quite significant. So I'm excited about that. And there's many other examples where you can see AI really making a difference. And we'll continue to experiment. Sometimes we do something and we say, hey, actually didn't make a difference, or it's not the right place to do it, or we need to adjust it. But continue to experiment is the biggest thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Experimenting. Speaking of experimenting, right? There's a growing interest in alternative credentials, microlearning, and skills-based hiring. How do you see this trend evolving, Kees? And what role should traditional degree programs play alongside these newer formats? What do you think?
Yeah, I think actually, like I said before, like there's definitely a massive trend towards non-degree programs, being it short course, self-paced, being it more cohort-based, sort of executive education. The demand for those kind of programs is increasing and is far outpacing the increases that we see on the degree side. And I think that's going to continue for a while. One very interesting development that we see, and we're kind of in a unique position to be able to see that because 2U is fairly unique in a sense that we have business that we do with academic institutions on the degree side, we do it on the executive education side, and we do it on the short course side. And often those are the same partners that we are talking to across these three, so let's say, different product sets. But more and more, these product sets are starting to merge into a continuum. And the best discussions that we currently have ongoing with some of our premium partners are around how do you think about a vertical, like for instance, AI, but think about those not only as the masters in AI, but also about the short courses in AI, and how do these different formats basically leverage the same content as well as stack on top of each other, right? So you can think, for instance, 3 certificates create like a executive education course when it's wrapped around with some in-person interaction, right? And then 2 executive education courses could be half of a micromasters, right? So thinking about it as a continuum is provides people an entry point into like this overall set of knowledge of learning, and ultimately potentially get them all the way to the degree. The other part is as well that people are taking a degree, they often come back to then add on and augment their learning with the newest certificate on AI in healthcare, for instance, or anything like that, right? So on both sides, it is very beneficial. And I think actually strongly believe that over time, it will be a requirement almost for academic institutions to think in that particular way. Because people like learners are going to expect and even demand that these different learning options are available to them.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that you mentioned you have this data available. And so that brings me to another question, right? So, what does the data tell you where higher ed should be placing its bets for the next few years? What are you seeing from your side, Case?
Well, we talked a little bit before about kind of like the fading bright lines between online education and on ground education. And by and large, this is actually driven by demands from the learners, right? So I have my kids have recently gone through college, but um,
Mm.
they completely expect that some of their classes that can take online or within a class they can do certain portions online and then go back on campus. So the expectation becomes that this is not like 2 separate forms of learning. It is one form of learning that sort of collapses and becomes hybrid, and you can select what best fits your particular needs. However, there's very few institutions that currently think about it that way, right? Very often within the structure of an institution, these are very different groups, very different people, and there's almost like a strong dividing wall between the two. And I think one of the things that is going to be necessary in the future to be successful is thinking about these much more fluidly and really think about the on-campus experience and the online experience as one experience, and basically having the same kind of like facilities, the same kind of capabilities I'm not thinking about them in 2 separate ways. That's a big mind shift, and I think there's some, but there's not a lot of institutions that are currently thinking that way. But I see that as one of the big changes that is going to happen in education over the next 5 to 10 years. And to be successful, it's one that we will have to act on as well.
Cool. And this question is similar, probably to the previous one, but if you could focus more on, because we have a lot of college university presidents, board of trustee members, that listen to this podcast. So if you could just focus on talking to them and saying, hey, these are my top recommendations that you're probably not hearing anywhere else from any other sources. So you should probably be working and thinking about these recommendations for the next 5, 10 years. What are some of those, if you can focus on that, Case?
Yeah, I think I would say the first one is probably think about kind of very strategically about what are the programs that you want to invest in, or programs or verticals that you want to invest in, right? And that's based on the sort of what the institution is known for, the brand of the university. But thinking about if I want to invest in a certain direction, what is the right direction to invest in, and be very strategic about it. The second part is to think about that investment holistically, and holistically as sort of a continuum in multiple ways, right? I talked about the continuum between short courses and certificates and micro bachelors, micro masters, and full degrees. So think about it as a continuum in that way, but also a continuum in terms of like purely online, purely on campus, and hybrid. So continuing that way, which takes a much more centralized and much more strategic approach from the top within the institution to do that well. But I think over in the long term, the institutions that take that approach, thinking about it the right way, will be the ones that will be most successful.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And speaking of the future, we've been on the future for a little bit. So really interested to hear about this case from you. What's your vision for 2U? What's on the horizon for 2U?
Well, like I said all the way in the beginning, I think of my job as sort of take to you back to the glory days that it had, right? But do that in a way that is the right way to do it for the world that we live in now, or we're going to live in 5 years, and not the one that existed 10, 15 years ago. Um, but it is sort of like making sure that within 2U as well, we're focusing on the right ways, right things, that we are leveraging the sometimes unique set of capabilities that we have, right? So things that we bring to the table is, like I said, a fairly unique set of businesses in different learning formats, being it in degree and executive education and in short form, and being able to look across that entire continuum also brings significant scale. It's still a business where some of the capabilities and some of the services that we provide benefit significantly from scale. That's definitely true on the marketing and enrollment side. It's also true in placement. That's important in some of our licensure programs. Scale matters, and those are the things that we bring to the table. But think about from 2U perspective, how taking all those capabilities, what are the building blocks, and how do we putting it together in the right recipe to get to the right growth and the right success that we want to get to as a company. In the end, what we see ourselves, our goal is to be a strategic partner to the top institutions in the world for innovation and growth. And to do that well, we need to be at the front end of innovation, and we need to make sure that we have the right capabilities to drive the growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And last question about the future, and we ask this one to all of our guests. And you're a higher ed guy. I mean, you know the industry well, so I'm curious to get your insights on this. So, what do you think is the future of higher education? What do you see?
That's a tough one.
It's always the last one and the toughest one, and you have to do it in 1 minute or less. Not just
Yeah, I could definitely give you some thoughts on it. You just have to live with the fact that there's quite a chance that I might be wrong on some of the things.
It's okay. It happens all the time. Don't worry about it. Just your thoughts.
No, one of the things that I truly believe is that like I said before, degrees will continue to play a role, but they will become a continuum with other forms of education. Other forms of education, certificates, and all that kind of stuff will increasingly become acceptable in the workplace. It is already the case, but that will only accelerate. So that means that the way students or learners of the future are going to think about sort of the learning that they need to get to the career that they're looking for, they're going to have a lot more options, and they're going to think about it in different ways. And I think there's a huge opportunity for institutions of higher learning, right, our academic institutions, to play a major role because students continue to look for the trusted brands, right? I mean, these are the trusted brands in education, and they look to those brands for, okay, provide me the solution that I'm looking for. So there's a huge opportunity for academic institutions to be a leader here, but they do need to be willing to step into that space and saying, okay, I want to play there. So that's one. On the other side, we talked a little bit as well. Like I said, sort of like online, on ground, it is all going to be some form of hybrid and flowing through. I imagine in the next 5 to 10 years, I think the onset of AI is only going to accelerate that as well. So I think that's another major change, and sort of thinking about what does that mean, and how as both as an ed tech company, but also if I was sitting in the seat of at academic institution, how do you need to think about that? What are the things that you need to start doing now to prepare for that future? So those are probably two of the biggest ones that I can see changing.
Yeah, fantastic. And one thing that I just want to add on, and you mentioned is the innovation partners. I feel like that is such a critical point of what you said, is that institutions need partners who are innovative and help them innovate, help them transform, and continue to grow in a continuous learning, continuous development. Because we teach that to the students, but we need to do also that as an institution ourselves, which I think it's a big part of it. So, this has been great. Thank you so much, Kees. I really appreciate you coming here and providing amazing insights. It's been very fantastic. I've learned a lot, so I really appreciate it. So I want to outro you, ladies and gentlemen. Today's guest, he's your guest. He is Kees Bol, and he's the CEO at 2U. Kees, thank you so very much for being with us today.
Great. Thanks very much for having me.
Absolutely. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd. Mark your calendars now for February 17th to the 19th, 2026. Because if you miss this, you'll be playing catch up all year. This is the future unbound. And the most important higher ed marketing and enrollment management conference of 2026. Insights EDU is taking over Fort Lauderdale, where Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top institutions nationwide will pull back the curtain on what's next. Are you ready to adapt or be left behind? Insights EDU 2026 is where leaders become game changers. Register now at insightsedu.com. That's insightsedu.com. Early bird pricing ends December 15th, 2025. Support the EdUp experience for just $5.99 a month and lock in that rate for life. You'll get ad-free early access to episodes. But hurry, price goes up after December 31st, 2025. Visit edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and click support the show.